Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to the 11th lecture of the course Management, Organizational Policies and Practices. Before we move on to today's lecture, I would like to give you a recap of lecture 10, which was on motivation, and we had a discussion on what is motivation and what are the different theories of motivation. We had a discussion on, we started off with the old theories of motivation, which are also termed as the need theories of motivation, and they are Maslow's need theory, ERG theory, theory X and theory Y, and the two-factor theory and the McLean's theory of needs. Then we had a discussion of the contemporary theories of motivation, which are the the cognitive evaluations theory, the goal setting theory. We also saw the application of the goal setting theory and the self-efficacy theory. So starting off with the Maslow's need theory, we discussed that how this theory emphasizes on a strict hierarchy of needs, and the theory categorizes the needs of the employees or the needs of the individuals into 5 categories, right? Starting off with the physiological needs and ending up at the need for self-actualization, which are the growth needs of the individual. And the theory says that unless and until the very basic needs of the individuals are followed, which give rise to the other social needs of the individuals, such as a need of affiliation and need of attachment with others, etc. So, and unless and until the basic needs are followed, individual does not care about the social needs, and when social needs are followed, then the individual thinks about the esteem needs, such as the need for recognition, etc. And when the esteem needs are met, only then the individual thinks about the need of self-actualization. Unless and until one hierarchy of needs is satisfied, individual does not move up the hierarchy, and his upper needs, he does not care about fulfillment of his upper needs or the needs highest on the on this pyramid of need hierarchies of the individuals, unless and until his basic needs are met. So Maslow's theory, it is still very old theory of motivation, like it was presented in 1943, but it is also the very commonly used theory of motivation as well. It gained great popularity. The theory, although the empirical evidence as to the correctness of this theory or as to the validity of this theory still remains untested. Because it's really difficult to measure the needs in which the theory has categorized itself. So it's difficult to measure those needs and collect data empirically from those aspects. That is why it becomes difficult to examine them, to examine the theory or empirically test the theory. Then the next theory which we discussed was the ERG theory. This is again theory is related to the Maslow's need hierarchy theory. Maslow divides the needs into 5 categories, and ERG divides the needs into 3 categories. E stands for existence, where the first 2 basic needs are met, which were given by Maslow. Then R is the relatedness, where the need for esteem are met, and then the growth needs, where the need of self-actualization, which was given by Maslow, that it is equal to that need hierarchy. The only difference between ERG theory and Maslow's need theory is that ERG basically it does not divide these 3 types of needs into strict hierarchies. So it does not say that unless and until all these needs cannot go on mutually, or they cannot be followed simultaneously. The theory says that an individual can follow all these 3 needs simultaneously. So maybe at the same time he's trying for a shelter or for food, and at the same time he's also trying to self-actualize. He's also trying to realize his real objectives in his career or for his growth. But again, empirically this theory has also not been tested, and it has also not been validated. Then we moved on to theory X and theory Y, which are believed on the managers' different assumptions about the individuals. So if the managers, they perceive that, or they assume that the individuals, they are inherently very slow, and they are not very, they are tardy, and they are not active towards work, or they don't take work as joy or pleasure. They are forced to do the work, and they do not take their own initiative to do the work, then that is theory X individuals. And theory Y individuals are those which basically, according to the managers, their assumptions, that they believe that the individuals, they are inherently attached to work, and they are inherently enjoy doing the task, and they feel work as play, and that's why they should be provided with the conditions which are conducive for them to keep going on working, right? So the conclusions or implications of this theory for the managers are that the managers, they commonly, the theory says that the managers generally believe that the individuals or the employees in the organization, they belong to the theory Y category. Therefore, they should be provided the participative management practices and other autonomy and responsibility oriented practices, and the conducive environment through which their intrinsic motivation for work can enhance, and they can perform better, and they can work better at jobs. Then we had a discussion of this two-factor theory, which was given by Herzberg, and it was basically divided the job satisfaction into two categories, where the one pole was job satisfaction on one extreme of the pole, which is job satisfaction, and the other extreme is no job satisfaction. And then so the theory, basically an important contribution of this theory is that it said that job satisfaction's opposite is not job dissatisfaction, but it is no job satisfaction. And similarly, job dissatisfaction's opposite is not job satisfaction, but no job dissatisfaction. And this contribution, or this conclusion, was drawn by Herzberg based on the data he collected from people, and he tried to gather the opinions of people as to whether the different what are the determinants of job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction. And he found out that the factors which conclude to the, or which result in the determining the job satisfaction, they are opposite to the factors which result in determining job dissatisfaction. So the factors are different which are affecting the two states, psychological states of the individuals. As a result of that, the two are not opposite of each other, but they are different in distinct constructs. So he divided basically the various factors that he came up with. He divided them into hygiene factors and motivating factors, or the motivators. And hygiene factors are the ones which prevent the individuals from job dissatisfaction, right? And so if those hygiene factors which constituted the extrinsic rewards in the form of the pays, promotions, salaries, or the recognition, or other extrinsic form of benefits, which can be both tangible or intangible, but they are the extrinsic benefits, right? So they are the hygiene factors according to Herzberg, and if they are provided to the individuals, then it will lead them from stopping, it will lead them from lesser job dissatisfaction or no job dissatisfaction. But if they are not there, then the individuals will be dissatisfied with their jobs. And on the other hand, the other category was the motivator, which are those factors which lead the individuals to job satisfaction. So motivators are those intrinsic factors which, according to Herzberg, they are basically the long-term determinants of the jobs of the individuals, or they're the long-term determinants of the satisfaction of the individuals, because they're the intrinsic factors that lead to higher job motivation of the individuals, which is also long-based compared to the hygiene factors, which only are the push factors for the individuals, and they keep them working only in the short term. And through those hygiene factors, individuals only keep performing in the short term. But for the long term performance of the employees, they need to be motivated in a way that they through the motivators which were identified by Herzberg, such as providing them, empowering them with their jobs, autonomy, responsibility, participation. And Herzberg was also basically the pioneer of giving the concept of job empowerment, which we will be discussing later in our today's lecture. Then the next theory, which was the McClelland's theory of needs, that again it is this theory also has certain, as we discussed, it has certain strengths, and it has but again this theory also is limited on the empirical testing. Therefore its validity is not well generalized or well established. But this theory again, the major contribution of this theory was that it divided basically the needs of the individuals into need for achievement and need for power and need for affiliation. But except for the other two needs, the need for achievement relationship with productivity has been very well tested, and it has also been achieved the empirical validity, and it has also been generalized and widely accepted that how need for achievement is positively related to employees' productivity, employees' better performance, and how it is positively related to the entrepreneurial behavior, how the individuals who are high on this need for achievement, they basically perform better on their jobs, and they do not this need for achievement is not basically strongly linked with their some other requirements, such as the managerial urge of the individuals to become the managers. So if they have need for achievement, it is not possibly related to effective management or effective managers. So effective managers, they might be more positively correlated on the need for power. So we had a long discussion on how these three different needs, they lead to varied outcomes, and how their validity is challenged on certain grounds and it is established on certain other grounds, right? Then we had a discussion of these contemporary theories of the motivation. These contemporary theories, they are not the contemporary theories because they do not, because they are the newer theories of motivation, and the earlier ones, they are the old theories of motivation. It's not only with respect to time, but they are also called contemporary theories because they basically try to explain the phenomenon which leads to the psychological states and the cognitive states of the individuals, which provide an explanation of how and why certain employee motivations, or how the employee attitudes develop, and what are the psychological factors which and how. So it explains basically the process, the mechanism through which the employees motivation develop and through which the employee's attitude develops. The cognitive evaluations theory, it has gained a lot of popularity in the literature on management, human resource management, also on the organizational psychology and organizational behavior literature. The theory basically divides the motivation into intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and it explains that how the extrinsic motivation can undermine the intrinsic motivation of the individuals, and the further empirical testing of the theory suggests that it is the intangible rewards that do not undermine intrinsic motivation, but it is the tangible rewards that undermine the intrinsic motivation of the individuals. So the theory proposes that the individuals and the managers, they should be really thoughtful before devising the incentive plans of the employees, because for certain employees the provision of the tangible rewards or the benefits that can lead to their reduced intrinsic motivation, so that can hurt the long-term performance of employees. Then we had a discussion on the goal setting theory, and we saw that how the emphasis of this goal setting theory is on setting specific and clear goals, and how it is related to the positive employee productivity and positive employee outcomes, right? And we saw the application, the MBO as an application of the goal setting theory, wherein the management, it sets the goals together with the employees, and how it works. And we also had a discussion on the limitations of this theory and on the criticism on this theory and on the MBO as well. Then we had a discussion of the self-efficacy theory, and we saw that how the self-efficacy and the goal theory, they complement each other. How as a part of the self-efficacy, you need to set the clear and specific goals, and then how the individuals who are more confident of themselves, that they can behave or they can work very well under different situations, how they are better performers in achieving the goals compared to the low self-efficacy individuals. They are not as good performers, and they cannot achieve their goal as well, because because they are low in their self-efficacy. We also discussed a number of factors that determine the self-efficacy of individuals and how the self-efficacy of the individuals can be enhanced, under what conditions it can be flourished. Then we had a discussion of all these the different theories of motivation in terms of the implications for the managers, what managers can do, how managers can better adopt those tricks and tips which can enhance the employees' motivation at the workplace, right? And we discussed all these implications theory by theory, as well as we had an overall discussion on the managerial implications. I basically tried to give you a detailed overview of what we did in our last lecture, that was lecture 10, which was on motivation. That was also because it is important for you to have a good link among these different theories of motivation, because in our lecture 11 we are again going to start off with a few leftover theories of motivation, and then we'll be following then to the different applications of these different theories. We'll be having a few more slides wherein we'll try to see that what is the application of these different theories of motivation. So my purpose behind giving you a detailed recap of lecture 10 was that you can make a better, after listening to this lecture now, the lecture 11, you can be you have very ready comparison in your mind between all the different theories of motivation. So let's start with the outline of today's lecture. We'll be starting our today's lecture with the reinforcement theory. Then we'll move to the equity theory of motivation. We'll try to make a comparison between the justice and the equity theory, and we'll then see the expectancy theory, which is the last theory of motivation that we are going to discuss. So by this time we'll have discussed all the theories of motivation which are old as well as contemporary, and there is, you can see there is a long list of these theories of motivation. Then we'll be discussing the job characteristics model, and then we'll have a look at the alternative work arrangements that are possible within an organization. Both this job characteristics model and alternative work arrangements, they are basically that in how you can that is basically an application of the concepts that we learned earlier on the motivation, and these alternative work arrangements and the job characteristics model, they are basically you can say that they are the extension, or they are the application of those concepts that we learned earlier, that how in the workplace we can introduce the things which can enhance the employee motivations, or how we can see the application of the different models of motivation, and they are basically the direct implications in the workplace. So then lastly we have the conclusions of today's lecture. Okay, so starting off with this reinforcement theory, we see that the theory basically is on a different line, or it is a little different from the earlier contemporary theories of motivation. The earlier theories that we discussed, such as the cognitive evaluation theory, the expectancy theory, they are basically they are also termed as the cognitive theories of motivation, because those theories try to, as I told you earlier, that they try to explain the psychological phenomenon which or the underlying processes that are taking place in the minds of the individuals, and that give rise to certain attitudes of the individuals, or the certain motivations of the individuals. So how different motivations of the individuals arise, they are basically trying to provide that explanation through the psychological phenomenon, or through psychological understanding, or through psychological states. And compared to that, this reinforcement theory, basically it does not explain a psychological state of how motivation occurs, but it explains, or it relates the employee's motivation to the environmental factors. It says that it's the behavior is caused environmentally, and or it is the result of the environmental factors or environmental conditions. So the theory basically says that your behavior, or the individual's behavior, it can be modified by providing or by controlling the consequences of that behavior. Right, so certain actions by the employer, they can lead to the modification of the employee behavior. So and the theory states that this behavior of employees, it can be reinforced when the employer exercises his controlling behavior time and again, then this reinforced behavior will also be repeated time and again. So let's have a detailed look on what the theory says. Maybe you're not very clear of the concept as yet. So the approach is not cognitive, but there are certain environmental factors which affect the behavior of the individual, which will determine his behavior, and it ignores the inner states and focuses on what is response from external environment of his actions. Behavior is the consequence of your prior behavior. So this is what this theory has to say. Before I move to the next theory of motivation, let me give you here an example of this reinforcement theory, so that it's a little bit more clear for you as to what this theory, how it is applied or what it says. So for example, if in a class one student, if he gets very late in the class, right, and you scold him for coming late in the class, right, and next day the individual is again late in the class, but not as late as he was the previous day. So you again scold him in the class, right, so and then the day next he will try to be in time in the class, right. So when he's in time in the class, you appreciate him for being timely in the class, and the next day to that he again comes timely in the class, and you again appreciate him for coming timely in the class. So what is happening here is that you are using two kinds of reinforcements. One is the positive reinforcement and the other is the negative reinforcement. So by use of these two types of enforcements, you are trying to modify or you are trying to correct the behavior of the employees, right. Negative reinforcement you are using when you are condemning or disliking the negative behavior of the employee. So you're condemning him, and as a result his behavior is modified, and when his behavior is modified and he started coming timely into the class, you are basically using the positive reinforcement, that is, you are appreciating his timely arrival to the class, and when you keep doing it again and again, he repeats his the timely behavior, and as a result that he adopts that behavior. As a result of positive reinforcement, you are making this correction in his behavior. So that is basically the example of the reinforcement behavior, in which you are using positive and negative reinforcements to correct the behavior of the individuals. Then we have the next theory is the equity theory of motivation. This theory is again a very popular, one of the very popular theories of motivation. So what this theory has to say is that individuals, they basically compare their job inputs and outcomes with those of others, and then respond to eliminate any inequities. So basically what happens is that if I before going into the details of this theory, if I give you an example that might be a help for you to understand the theory better. So if for example a person Jane, if she joins in an office, she applies for a job interview, and she has this interview, and she has all the screening and all the tests and everything, and she's selected to the job, and her credentials are that she is Harvard graduate, and she's a scholarship holder there as well, and she outperformed in her class as well. So she's very outstanding student, and she has an outstanding academic career, and she's very intelligent, and she's very smart. She has really outperformed in all the tests that have been taken, and so she is a wonderful potential candidate for a job. So she also expects that she'll be given some remuneration package which is commensurate with her skills and with her expertise. So what happens is that the organization, which is a very leading firm, it makes an offer to Jane, which is, for example, which is $2,000 a month, right? So this is the offer that has been given to Jane, and Jane is very happy on this offer because she was expecting some very good outcome, and she feels that she's happy with this offer and she's satisfied with the outcome, right? So she joins the workplace, and she starts coming to the workplace, and she's very happy working there. All of a sudden, Jane finds out that the company has hired a new worker who is also of the same credentials as is Jane, but he has been paid $2,050 a month instead of $2,000, which was offered to Jane. So Jane immediately starts making a comparison of her credentials herself with those of the other newcomer, who has the same credentials as Jane's, but he is being paid $50 extra than Jane. Jane is very upset when she hears this, and she feels that there is some kind of inequity taking place in the workplace, and she has not been treated fairly. So this leads to the very lower level of motivation of Jane all at once. Her job satisfaction decreases, and she is even thinking of quitting the job and finding a better job, another job elsewhere where she is also paid more. So what is happening in this case is that Jane, who was very satisfied previously with her job and with her with the amount of money that she is getting, she was very happy with that. But now what has happened is that she is instantly dissatisfied because she has instantly jumped into a comparison with a referent other. Right? So equity theory basically states that individuals in the workplace, they try to make a comparison of their input-output ratio with the input-output ratio of some referent others, right? And these referent others can be a number of categories, or they can be anyone. They can be anyone in the workplace, or they can be anyone outside the organization, or they can be anyone who have worked in the organization some time ago but who are not there anymore, right? So it can be anyone. You can be wherein you feel that you have a comparison with that someone else, that your credentials or your input is similar to that of the someone else, and what output he is getting and what output you are getting. So you try to make comparisons with others, with the referent others, and these comparisons are self-inside. They can be your comparison inside the organization, your comparison outside the organization, and it can be the others' comparison inside, and it can be other comparison outside. So what we see here in equity theory is that these, when you're trying to make a comparison, how you're comparing is that you are comparing your output-input ratio with that of the referent other, and if your output-input ratio is lower than that of the relevant other, then you will be perceiving inequity due to being under-rewarded. So it means that you are perceiving that you are being paid lesser output compared to the output that your referent other is getting, or you're being treated unfairly or unequally. Then there is the second category or second possibility is that you compare your input-output ratio with that of your co-worker, and you feel that they are alike, and then you will perceive equity, and you will perceive that you are, again, there is inequity because you're being over-rewarded. So that is the case when your input-output ratio exceeds that of your referent other, right? So inequity can be coming both from the being under-rewarded and both from being over-rewarded, right? So inequity, it does not necessarily mean that it's coming only from being under-rewarded. So it can be from being over-rewarded as well, although the outcomes of those different types of inequity would be different for the employees. So it would, of course, over-rewarding an employee, that would lead to a different outcome, such as maybe he enhances his productivity as a result of being over-rewarded, right? And the inequitable employees who feel that they're being treated unequally and they're being under-rewarded, they respond differently. So in the next slides, we'll see that how what are the different choices that are available for dealing with the inequity, or what do the individuals do when they perceive that they are being treated unequally. Then the first one is the change in the inputs, that is they slack off, they just reduce their effort, or the amount of effort that they were putting in the job. They just reduce that amount of effort, and they reduce their inputs, right, so that they try to achieve a better input-output ratio, and they try to achieve the equity with that of the referent others. So that is one way of doing it. The other way of reaction, so this is what basically the individuals are doing, they are trying to react. So when the change outcomes, what happens is that they trying to reduce, they are trying to increase the level of their outputs by giving lesser quality of products, or lesser, so they reduce the quality and try to increase the quantity of the output. That is how they can change the outcomes, right? And then the other option available to them is that they can change, or they can distort the perceptions of self, right? For example, they might start thinking that they don't need to, they were really working harder, and they don't need to work that much hard on that task. They can also change perceptions of others, of the referent others with whom they are trying to make the comparison. They might be thinking that Maslow, for example, is not working, his job is not as exciting or as good as I was thinking it to be. Then they can choose a different referent person altogether. For example, okay, maybe my output or my rewards are not as good as those of my brother-in-law, but maybe they are better than what my father used to get. So you're trying to change your referent other, and then you can altogether quit the job, just as Jane thought of quitting the job. Equity theory is basically, as I told you, that it has some fair generalizability, and it has gained some statistical support and empirical evidence. It suggests that how employees, they really make a comparison between their input-output ratios and those of the referent others, and the different outcomes of the equity theory. But there are also certain criticism on the equity theory. So before I move on to this justice and equity theory, I would like to draw your attention on how this theory is criticized. So the first natural criticism of this theory, or very logical criticism, is that the theory only considers the input-output ratio in terms of the pays, right, in terms of the money rewards that the individuals gets, and in terms of the money rewards that the referent others get, right? But what about the other forms of rewards? There can be a number of other forms of rewards which the organization gives, the other fringe benefits and the other benefits other than the pays. So what about them? How about their comparison? So it's in the end, it's always a package. It's not only pay, right? And individuals, they are counting on a number of other tangible and intangible rewards as well, other than pay, right? But this theory only revolves around pay, so it's not a complete picture of what happens in the organization, right? So the theory has been criticized on this aspect, that it considers only the rewards. And then another point of criticism that this theory faces, like some people, they are offered very good conducive environment. For example, if your referent other, he is having very good office, and he's having very good furniture and a very good space and all the tools and equipments to do his work, right? And he is on a similar position as you, but your office is not that conducive and your office is small, then maybe again there is a perception of inequity arising in your mind, right, regardless of the pays. So maybe you're getting equal pays, but his work facilities are different than yours, and it will give rise to inequity. Then another criticism on this theory is that it considers the inequity formed in the minds of the individuals basing on their pays. But on the other hand, certain individuals, they do not make comparisons with others in the workplace. There are also such individuals or cases who, or if they make a comparison, they always keep themselves, or they're fine with keeping or perceiving themselves at a little lower end than that of the others with whom they may compare or with whom they compare, right? So that is another criticism on this theory, that it does not consider all aspects of the employees or all types of workers. So some workers, maybe they do not make comparisons, right? Then when we are discussing this equity theory, and when we are discussing this concept of the referent others, we also need to see that the theory gives a very good explanation of how the referent others, they are selected, and how they can your gender in the workplace, and your job tenure in the workplace, and your overall professional experience, your organizational status, how they can moderate this relationship between your input-outputs and ratios and the referent others, right? So in the selection of the referent others, the theory says that the people that generally try to make comparisons with those who are similar to you, whom you perceive similar to you. For example, if a woman in the workplace, they generally try to make comparisons with the other woman in the workplace, but not with the man in the workplace, because generally what happens in the organizations is that, as we all are familiar with, that the women are not paid equal to the men, even in similar positions. One, they are paid generally a little lesser, because they are perceived to be less productive than men, and they are perceived to be low in performance compared to their counterpart men. So women, that is why they when they try to make a comparison, they try to make a comparison with the other woman in a similar position, but not with a man. But those jobs which are not gender specific, or where there is no discrimination of gender, in those jobs the women may try to compare themselves with the other men, which are not gender specific jobs, right? Then with the organizational tenure, that also plays a moderating role in this, as per this theory, such as the individuals who are fresh in the organization, or who have newly joined the organization, they do not try to make as much comparisons as the individuals who are in the organization for a longer time, right, who are more experienced, because the more experienced employees in the organization, they are very well understanding of the ifs and buts and the nitty-gritties in the organization. They're very much familiar with all the different people and their positions and their jobs, and then what they're getting in what terms, right? So they're in a better position to make a comparison, while the fresh individuals, they don't have that good understanding of the others, of who can be the referent others, etc. So therefore they are less into this making of the comparisons, right? Then the individuals who are really higher at the organizational status, such as the organizational, such as the top managers in the organization, etc. They try to make comparisons, because they are they are expected to be professionally sound. They're better professionals than the others at the lower level. Also they are expected to be more experienced, and also they are expected to be very well educated, and they also expected to have very good social networks. So those individuals, and more knowledge of the organization itself and the other organizations in the industry. So these individuals, they are expected to make more outside comparisons, right? So they will try to compare themselves with their counterparts in the other organizations in the industry. So they will be more into this outside comparison. Okay, so these were some of the assumptions, some of the limitations, and some of the criticism on the equity theory. And now we try to see a relationship between justice and equity theory. So just as one of the criticism of the equity theory was that it talks only about the pay inequity, right, or the being over rewarded and under rewarded, and the different reactions of the individuals as to the perceptions of being over and under rewarded. So the next theory on so this basically gave rise to so this is basically being over output. In terms of output, it is similar to the concept of the distributive justice, the equity theory, but justice, the concept of organizational justice, it arose because it is a more broader concept, and it it assimilates all the different aspects of the fairness perceptions of the individuals in the workplace, not only the pay perceptions and not only the outcome perceptions that are in the workplace, right? So it tries to take a more broader look of the fairness perception. So justice basically theory, or the organizational justice is basically says that there are three different aspects of justice or the perceptions of the individuals in the workplace, and to create organizational justice or to have the organizational justice perceptions in the organization, all these three dimensions, individuals should be positive on all these different dimensions of organizational justice. Distributive justice is basically when the individuals they are trying to relate their outcomes with those of the others, right? So it is basically the how fairness perceptions about the distribution of outcomes, right? So such as I got the pay raise I deserved, right? That is an example of distributive justice. So here it is about the distribution of the outcome. So it is more related to the equity theory, the concept of equity theory. But we also saw as one of the criticism of the equity theory that it's not only about the outcomes and the distribution and comparison of those outcomes that are not the only determinant of employees' perceptions, right? Or only they are not related actually to the employees' equity perceptions, right? So one aspect is distributive justice, which is relating to the outcomes that the individuals receive, right? Whether they are satisfied with the distribution of those outcomes or not. Then we have this procedural justice. Procedural justice basically talks about the procedure that the organization uses to arrive at certain outcomes, right? That how you are arriving at the outcomes, those outcomes, right? So it is basically perceived fairness of process used to determine outcomes. So what is the process that you used to arrive at the determined outcomes? So example is, I had input into the process used to give raises and was given a good explanation of why I received the raise I did, right? So the theory basically states that, or the research findings, they state that individuals' perceptions of procedural justice, they might be more important than the distributive justice perceptions, because sometimes if the individuals, they perceive injustice on front of the distributive justice, right? Such as if an individual, he feels that he has not been paid as well as he should have been paid, or his outcome is lesser than his inputs, that is distributive injustice perception by the employee, right? And when he has a meeting with the manager and manager tells him his outcomes, right? So if the manager tries to explain the process which was used to achieve at those outcomes, or how that those outcomes they were calculated, if manager tries to explain to the employee and tries to give him a feeling, or gives him a feeling that the process through which the outcomes are arrived is transparent, is fair, the performance appraisal system is fair, and these are the measures that were used and how it was assessed, etc. So if that process is fair, then the employees, they will be perceiving this procedural justice, and if that process is not used, then they are they'll be lacking this, right? So the use of clear and transparent process and the fair perceptions of the procedural justice can sometimes even overcome the negative perceptions of the individuals about the distributive outcomes. So if you explain the process to the employee, that why he has not received a very good increment because he was not, his performance appraisal was not very good, because because he had done this and this, he was short on this, and this is the process that we use to arrive at this outcome, then the employees, it may be more easier for the employee to understand that outcome and to accept that outcome. So his attitude might be less aggressive, and it might be more accommodating and understanding, right? So procedural justice is really important. It's not the distributive justice alone. Then it's another dimension of organizational justice is the interactional justice. Interactional justice basically says that the perceived degree to which one is treated with dignity and respect. So that is basically how you are dealing with the employees. What is the perception of the employee as to how his supervisor treats him or how his manager treats him, whether he treats him with the respect, with kindness, and with dignity or not. And for example, some superiors or some bosses, it's just to show their bossy nature, they are basically very commanding on the employees, and in front of the others sitting, they try to scold their subordinates, right, and to demonstrate their controlling behavior. So that might be disrespectful and unfair in the eyes of the subordinate. So the degree with which the employees perceive that they are being treated with respect and dignity, that is the interactional justice. So the example is when telling me about my raise, my supervisor was very nice and complimentary, right? So then this is the interaction. Then other than these, in the recent literature, there is another dimension of organizational justice, which is the informational justice. And these 4 dimensions of organizational justice, they were basically given by Colquitt in 2001 or in 1999. You can also have a detailed look on this literature on organizational justice in some good journals. So informational justice basically says that the degree of the perception of the employees about the quality and quantity of the information that they're receiving from the organization or from their superiors or from their boss or from the manager. So if the employees perceive that they are being informed very well on the different aspects of their job or the different information about the organization which is relating to them or about the organizational decision making, then they will perceive that their organizational justice is being used. And if they perceive that they are not being informed well, then they will be perceiving injustice on this dimension. So all these different forms, they combine together to form the organizational justice, which is the overall perception of what is fair in the workplace. Example, I think this is a fair place to work. So overall, it's a good place to work, or overall, it's a fair place to work. So we have a detailed discussion of all these 3 different types of justice already. Now we move to our next theory, which is the expectancy theory. Expectancy theory, what it tries to do is that it's trying to make 3 different links at there are 3 different chains of links, and it is trying to link them all up together, right? So if one chain breaks, then the theory will not work, right? So it starts off with the individual effort, and so the first is the individual effort, which is linked to individual performance. So the individuals, they must feel that if they make an effort, they can perform better, or their performance can improve. So there needs to be a link between the individual effort and individual performance. That is the individual's expectation that if they put in some effort, their performance will improve. Then second, they should have this expectation that if they perform well, they will be rewarded, right? So that is the second expectation of the individual. And the next expectation of the individual is when they are rewarded, the reward will be something that they care about, right? So there are these 3 ends, there are these 2 ends, and there are these 3 links in this chain that need to be tied to each other, and if one of them is broken, then the theory won't work, or individual's effort, there won't be enough motivation of the individual to exert an effort. So if we, for example, say that an individual, he knows that if he puts in an effort, he will be performing better and it will lead to some rewards from the organization. But if those rewards are not enough, or they do not satisfy, they do not meet the personal goals of the employees, then it won't be worth it for the individual to put in that effort. He won't be motivated to put in that effort. So it is the importance of that goal, whether they meet the personal needs of the employee or not, that lead to the exertion of the effort, individual effort. Here, before moving to our next slide, I would like to give you an example. So, for example, if I am asked that I will be given a 3 days trip to Dubai if I achieve this performance goal, right? So will it be motivating for me or it won't be motivating for me? That depends on my personal needs, right? So if I know that even if I achieve that goal and I get that those 3-day return trip to and that is fully sponsored to me, but if I know that I cannot avail that offer or I cannot go there, then it means that it is not satisfying my personal needs, and it means that it is not a good motivator for me to put in some extra effort and to achieve that goal, right? So your personal needs then should be aligned with the incentive that you are getting. Only then you will be motivated to put in extra effort and or putting in some effort and to achieve the goals that you are being given or that are being set. If on the other hand some other individual is given the same offer, right, it might be a very good motivator for that individual to put in some effort and achieve that goal, right? So we have very important implications from this theory that managers, they need to understand the different personal needs of the individuals, right? So one kind of extrinsic benefit, it's not important, that will be equally valued for all the employees or that will be considered as a benefit for all the employees, right? So one rule or one policy will not work for all, because the individuals, they have the different motivational orientations, and the managers, they need to understand their different motivational orientations. So I have here a small example or a smaller question for you, right? Elizabeth's boss, it starts out the day each morning saying, "Bet you wish you didn't have to be here." Knowing this, which theory gives us insight as to why Elizabeth may not be motivated at work? Right? So of course if you try to answer it yourself, first try to answer it yourself, then go to the next slide and see the answer. I would suggest you, so that you know that how much understanding you have developed of all the different motivation theories. So for the answer, I move to the next slide. It is that Elizabeth's boss may well be a theory X manager, as he or she assumes employees don't like or want to be there. Right? So as according to theory X, the employees, they don't like their work and they don't want to be there, right? So that is what Elizabeth's boss is also saying. Then we have another example for you, which says that if you study really hard and only get a B on an exam, but your classmate barely studies at all and gets an A, what theory will help explain why you feel less motivated to go to class? I think it should be very easy for you to answer that if you are giving very good input, but your marks are lesser compared to your class fellow who is not working as hard but he's getting very good results. So it should be equity theory, right, where you perceive that your input output ratio is lower than the input output ratio of your of your class fellow. Then what theory would say that this man in this figure, which you can see, who knows he works hard and is performing well, will be motivated by a gym membership for being a high performer, right? So what theory would say this, that the employee who is really working hard, he feels that he will be getting a gym membership if he keeps working hard. So of course this is the expectancy theory, where you are expecting that you are putting extra effort, you will be performing better and you will be getting this incentive which will follow your personal needs. So this is the expectancy theory. And then, would a gym membership be considered a motivator or hygiene factor according to Herzberg? Discuss with a classmate. Right? So make a discussion, or think yourself, make a discussion and try to find out whether this gym membership that will be considered a motivator or a hygiene factor as per the Herzberg's theory. Then we have the job design theory. It's basically the job characteristics model that identified a few job characteristics that can basically improve the different outcomes, improve the motivation of the employees at the workplace. So they are the skill identity, variety, significance, autonomy and feedback. So we start off with the job characteristics model. It basically says that jobs which are high in all these 5 characteristics, they result in better 3 psychological states of employees. Knowledge of results. 1, they are given appropriate feedback. They have the knowledge of what they have done and how they can correct it. Meaningfulness of work. It gives more meaning to their work, and it gives more personal feelings of responsibility for results. You feel more responsible for results. You feel accountable for results because you have the some sense of autonomy, and you have some sense of variety in your task. Then it increases all these 3 psychological states, which result in increased motivation, performance, and job satisfaction. So let's have a look at all the different the concepts used in this theory. One is a skill variety, which is the degree to which a job requires a variety of different activities, like how many different skills are used in a given day, week, month, right? So how much is the variety different? So it means that different skills that you have to use in your job. You don't have to use the same skill in your job. So and then the task identity is the degree to which the job requires completion of a whole and identifiable piece of work. From beginning to end, you can identify with the task that, okay, you have done this. Then significance is the degree to which the job has a substantial impact on the lives or the work of other people. And autonomy is the degree to which the job provides substantial freedom and discretion to the individual in scheduling the work and in determining the procedures to be used in carrying it out. And then we have the feedback, which is the degree to which carrying out the work activities required by a job results in the individual obtaining direct and clear information about the effectiveness of his or her performance. So when the theory basically says that you can, when you have a combination of these together with the autonomy and feedback, then it will be leading to your motivating potential score. So people who work on jobs with high core dimensions, they are generally more motivated, satisfied, and productive. And the dimensions which you can see within the brackets, the 3 dimensions, they are the core dimensions. And job dimensions operate through the psychological states in influencing personal and work outcome variables rather than influencing them directly. So here we have the complete picture of the model. So we have the core dimensions, which are the skill variety, task identity, and task significance, and which lead to the critical psychological states of experienced meaningfulness of the work. Right? So if you have all these 3 states, you have the you will experience more your work more meaningful when you have more variety in your task, when you can identify with the task, and when you perceive that it is significant. It will give you feeling of the meaningfulness, and it will increase your internal work motivation. When you have the autonomy in your task, in your job, then you will experience a feeling of responsibility for the outcomes of your work, and it will again lead to higher outcomes such as a better quality work performance, more internal motivation, and high satisfaction with work, and low absenteeism and turnover. And for the feedback, when you are receiving on how you are performing, then it will again improve the knowledge of the actual results of the work activities, and it will again lead to these number of personal and work outcomes which are on the right hand side of this exhibit. So here are the different examples of how these different core characteristics in the job they can vary. If you have high variety in job or the low variety in job, so I give you an example of low variety, that a body shop worker who sprays paint 8 hours a day, so that is the only job he is doing. He is spraying paint 8 times, so he only needs one type of skill, of course, to do that job. And high variety is where you are into a number of other jobs as well, such as owner operator of a garage who does electrical repair, rebuilds engines, does body work, etc. Then we have the high identity and low identity. A low identity is in which a worker in a furniture factory, he is making only the legs of the table, vis-a-vis if a worker if he is responsible for making the whole table, then he can really identify with the task that he has done. He can say that, okay, I have made this table. He can identify with it. But the person who is making legs, he cannot identify. That is a low identity job. Then you have the high significance. That is the nursing the sick in a hospital intensive care unit. And the low significance is sweeping hospital floors. So significance is when you really feel that your contributing to the workplace, or your job is really important or critical, right? So sweeper's job is not significant, but the person who is tending a sick in the hospital, his job is critical or it is significant. Then high autonomy is where you have more power and more responsibility, right, to your job, and you can make your decisions. You have certain discretion in the job. Where low autonomy, such as the job of a telephone operator who only has to handle the phone calls, and he has a highly specified procedure that how he has to handle those calls, that is a low autonomous job. And then we have the feedback, or the degree of feedback can vary. So we have the high feedback, wherein an electronics factory worker who assembles a radio and then tests it to determine if it operates properly, and the low feedback situation, those jobs wherein there is no feedback possible, or the feedback is very low. Okay, now we have a discussion of on all the different alternative work arrangements, and the first one is the flexi time. Flex time is basically when employees, they can during a common core time period each day they have, but they have a discretion in forming their total work day from a flexible set of hours outside the core time, right? So if we have a look at this example, here you can see that the employee's core time, it starts at 9 a.m. and it ends at 3 p.m. but the organization or the office opens at 6 a.m. and it is till 6 p.m. So the first 3 hours from 6 to 9 a.m. and the last 3 hours from 3 to 6 p.m. they are the flexible times that the individual has. In between this core time, the individual has to be there in the organization, but those two extreme and boxes, they are the flexible times that the individual has. So he has to make a total of 8 hours of work, so he has the flexibility of 2 hours each at both ends, right? That either he can start at 6 a.m. and end at 3, he can start at 7 and end at 5, and start at 8 and end at 5, and so on, right? So he has this flexibility. So we have certain advantages of this, that when you're giving more flexibility to the workers in terms of their work time, then of course it has reported to reduce their absenteeism, and it is reported to increase their productivity, and it is reported to reduce the overall turnover ratio in the organizations, right? So for example, the mothers, working mothers, they can easily, if they have the flex time, their organization offers them the flex time, they can easily match their timings, their office or their working timings with the timings of their school children, right? They can just drop their children to school and then come to office and then pick them and go back and complete their work hours at office as well, right? So it has huge flexibility in the for the employees, and that is why it produces the positive outcomes. Then, but there are certain disadvantages as well, such as it is not possible to offer this flex time in all the jobs. Then there is telecommunicating, which is another alternative work arrangement, which is that the employees, they do their work at home on a computer that is linked to their office, so they do not need to go to office every day. That is telecommuting. It has certain advantages as well, because it is again a flexibility that is given to the employees, that they can work at home as well for a few days in a week, right? And so it's motivating for the employees. It increases their performance and productivity, but again it has certain downsides as well, such as out of sight, out of mind. So you're away from the manager, you're away from the office, and that is why your boss may not be very as when it comes to the performance appraisals, or when it comes to other, you're running short of meetings, you're not able to attend as many meetings as you could when you're in office all the time, right? So it has this kind of disadvantages. Then of course another advantage to the organization is that lesser space may be needed in the organizations, in the office. You don't have to arrange separate office for the individuals, and it can reduce you on certain costs, etc. So here we see the other advantages and disadvantages. Another disadvantage is that the direct supervision with the employees is not possible, and it's difficult to coordinate the teamwork when some of the team member is sitting at home. Then difficult to evaluate non-quantitative performance, right? Because when you're sitting home working there, then the quality of the performance, it may not be so easy to measure or determine. Then we have the job sharing, wherein two or more people, they share the same job. Right, so one job that was previously done by only one person, now it is being done by two people. That is job sharing, right? So in which what happens, the two employees, there is some contract between them and the organization, wherein for example, one employee will work Mondays, Tuesdays, the other will work Thursday, Fridays, and they will alternate Wednesdays, right? So that is an example of the job sharing. And it can be challenging for the organization, because it might be difficult for the organization to find the pairs of workers who can share the jobs, but it gives again flexibility, and it might be a very good option for the people such as the women who also have to attain the work-life balance. It might not be possible for them to work 40 hours a week, and it might not be possible for retirees to work 40 hours a week. So it might be a very good option for them to share jobs, right? And for the organization, another benefit is that they can avoid the layoffs, they can overstaff due to the overstaffing. And Japan is the example, Japan is increasingly doing this thing, the job sharing. So it gives the flexibility to the organization as well as to the workers. So implications for the managers are that they need to see that when the employee is not doing well, they need to check the job and the work design. So does the employee has the materials, supplies, tools, equipment to perform? How are the workers? What is the nature of their jobs? And how can it be made better? Right? So these are all the different aspects that managers, they need to see when they are gauging that why employee performance is not better. So there are a number of factors which we saw that how they influence the employee attitudes, their motivations, and their behaviors. So with this, we come to an end of today's lecture. I hope you had a good time listening, you had a good listening. So see you again. Allah Hafiz.